Am I live? Is this thing on? Tap, mic. There's not a mic. I could have a mic, I guess. Um, okay. It took me longer than usual to get the live turned on because I discovered that Instagram doesn't let me go live anymore because I need like 1,000 followers or something. I don't have that many, which makes me really sad because that means I can't easily share this to my folks on Instagram. Um, but I'm gonna find a way. It's probably gonna be leveraging YouTube. But we will persevere. Today, I'm talking about goal setting. So I've got a new goal to set for myself called make the videos happen now that the rules have changed. It's my favorite activity when the rules change. Anyway, um, I didn't want to talk about technology challenges, but that's always where I start because it's like the first thing on my mind. The other first thing on my mind is that I am hosting a party today. It's technically a networking event, but it's my favorite group here in Tacoma, Tacoma Boss Ladies. So if you've not heard me talk about it, you should totally check it out. And I don't know, send me an email if you want to get in on it today, because we're going to get together this evening. Usually it's like last Friday of the month, and the locations who is ever hosting, and I get to host this time. So I'm very excited about it. We're going to play some games, and you get to meet some fun people. I love the ladies there, and ladies is a very expansive term with this. So if you feel like you would belong, you belong. But anyway, end of August, I've been chewing on this blog article for 2 months because sometimes that's how life goes. Um, yeah, so I've been trying. So, okay, rewind. Let me set the scene. Back in January, I was like, I'm going to do an article for I'm going to talk each month about one of the sections of business plan. But like make it relevant to self-employed people. And so here we are 8 months later, and I'm on, I believe, this final formal section of the traditional business plan. And so the task I had assigned myself was to talk about a management plan. Now, a management plan in the traditional business sense is that you want to like line everybody who's involved, like what the key roles are. But you get an org structure put together, you write position descriptions for everything, for the sort of owner or the key operator, manager person, the person being that day to day. You want like a rundown on what they're bringing to the table, like hopefully they have some experience in this field or experience managing people or something like that. Um, and all of this with the aim of convincing a funder, so an investor or like the officer at a bank, that you are a you're likely to be successful, right? You've thought this through, you have a team, you know what your team needs to be, makes good sense. Yeah, so if you tuned out already, that's correct, because when you are a self-employed person, your org structure is one box, no little lines and other boxes. It's just you. And you don't really need to like review your own way because you lived it, you know it, and you have no funders because you're, self-funding. So this is really silly. Um, and there is an aspect of self-employment that is really key to talk about when it comes to managing. So in self-employment, you don't have a boss, right? You are your own boss. And this is something I've come to love about self-employment. I didn't think it was a freedom that I would want until I was self-employed. And now I'm like, I can't imagine having a bother again or coworkers or office politics. I really don't understand office politics, it turns out, or I'm very happy to not understand it. So, so I know this is great. And I see folks who are considering self-employment having some like conflicting emotions, right? Yay, I don't have a boss, but also anxiety about like how do I then motivate myself to get things done? because I don't have a boss there sort of holding me accountable. And this is where a business management plan or a self management plan can come into play, right? Like we should have a plan for how that's going to go down and what our expectations are and how we're setting goals and how we're talking to our staff, being that would be your self-talk, right? Like this is what we need to actually work on as self-employed business owners. So not complicated. Like I said, we've got a org chart of just a square. And that self-management plan or personal management plan can be tricky, right? Because we're used to motivating ourselves by something outside of ourselves, something an extrinsic factor. And that's what we're used to with employed work. Like either we're doing it for the teammates or we're doing it for the boss or we're doing it for the paycheck, right? It's something outside of ourselves. Even in like education, we're doing it for the diploma, right? A lot of times it's extrinsic and not sort of coming from within. And so if you don't have any outside factors checking in on you, what is your strategy for motivating and organizing yourself? As I've already alluded to, there's a huge underpinning of this that has to do with like your mindset, self-talk, your expectations being realistic. And I've talked about those in so many different blog articles. I will continue talking about types of things because there's so many different little like facets and aspects to it to talk about. But I have now collected all of those blog articles into like its own little list. So if you click over to my website, find this article, you'll find a link to all of the sort of personal management plan category stuff. So for today, I'm going to assume that we're doing some good positive self-talk. We're setting some realistic expectations. And we're going to talk more about the plan making process. So the plan making process, it's something I do really reflexively. So full disclosure, I haven't painstakingly learned how to do this. I might not be the best person to teach you how to do this. It means I'm a really good planner, maybe not a good teacher. So I'm going to do my best and sort of highlight how I do this. And if it doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean anything wrong with you. From working with all the clients I work with, I see how like a one size fits all approach to planning, it doesn't work. So I'm not going to tell you this is the only way to plan things. I'm going to tell you this is how I do it. If you want to copy me, go for it. If you find or develop a better method that works for you, like totally share it with me. I would love to like spread the word or expand my own knowledge, both. Right. So planning can be a very personal thing. And this is how I do it because, I love to give you tools that I use with my clients as much as possible. So this is the thought process I go through when I'm sitting across from a client who's like, I need to meet this goal. I need to build this business. So step one, we're going to have 3 steps. Step one, you need to identify your goal, right? We need to define what this is. A lot of folks might start with a goal like, I want to have a thriving business, which is a great goal. Like, yeah, I will accept that. You're in the right place. And it's not great for our purposes, right? It's not measurable. Thriving business is not concrete. We don't know when you've achieved that. There's no kind of like time boundness to it. Like, do you want the thriving business before you're 80 years old or like in the next 5 years, right? You might want that. We need some time delineation there because at some point you're probably, given capitalism, you're going to need to jump ship on it if it's just not working or change tactics, right? It's also like having a thriving business is a goal it's unclear if it's achievable. Like we can't be confident that that's possible. And like the achievability of a business idea, it's not a great thing. I have so many examples of things that are like, that shouldn't have been a thing, and yet here it is. Or it is probably Wikipedia, where it's like volunteer encyclopedia. No, thank you, please. Um, like back in the 80s, if you asked anyone, that's what they would have said, and they put encyclopedias out of business. So, like, is it a good idea? I can't tell you that, but um, we can investigate, make an educated guess, and we need more information than just like, I want to have a thriving business. Like, what is the business doing? How are we doing this? So, to reframe our goal or refine it, um, for those of you who've heard of SMART goals, right? Things that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. We want to hit all those. Great. Okay. So I want a business to be bringing in 4,000 per month by December, right? That's very specific. It's $4,000 rev is measurable. It's achievable to the best of our knowledge. It's relevant because you want your business to, it's relevant to you. And it's time bound. We want to do this by December. So like it's ticking all those boxes, which is great. My issue with it is that the factors leading to achieving that goal are not within your control. And there's no clarity about what actions within your control are going to get you there, right? So how? um, so if I was to rewrite this a level further, I would say my business needs to gross $8,000 per month in sales for it to be sustainable. I will reach this goal if I have 10 monthly clients. I think I can get clients by A, post monthly blog articles, and B, connecting with professionals who also serve my ideal clients. So this goal, many more words, it also doesn't stand alone, right? Like this is implying that I've done some work, that I know I need to gross $8,000 a month in sales for it to be like sustainable, to hit a particular um, point for my final health or the business's financial health. And I figured out that that would be 10 monthly clients. And, if I'm offering a discount or, there's some sort of variety in the pricing there, we've sort of simplified it to if I get 10, I'm someplace in the ballpark of that. And then I've also named 2 specific approaches I'm using to get to those 10 monthly clients. So it's also open to revision, right? I think I can get clients this way, but only time's going to tell. And so a key part of like a robust goal is that, well, first of all, you're not doing too many things, right? We have 2 specific approaches. I talk about this a lot if you to my website for Racehorse and Plowhorse. This is my Racehorse Plowhorse model where you've got like 2 marketing projects at any particular time. And you are fully in control of executing on those projects. Like it does not require other people, like even connecting with professionals, right? Like you can do the work to interface with them. You can't guarantee they're going to show up, but we can do this effort for a period of time, say about 3 months, like once a quarter, sort of check in with how things are going, and reassess, right? We got to like run with it for a minute, see how it goes, and then revise. This is an iterative process for all my design nerds out there. So that's step 1. We're going to get a goal that is not only SMART, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound, but that is also within your control and has hopefully some planning math behind it, which guess I've written articles about that in the last 6 months, because that's all part of a business plan. So go check my blog for stuff. Okay, so this means we have the goal and we have 2 key projects that hopefully achieve that. So step 2, One was the goal. Two is these two projects. We need to actually make these actionable. And I notice a lot of folks will kind of shortcut this. I think of this as like, in math class in school, like you'd have to show your work. Um, it can be worth it to show your work so that you understand what the steps are, even if it feels a little bit pedantic. Um, we're going to do it. I do this for myself. I'll get more into that, but like this is my process. So for project A, right, we're going to post blog articles. I literally do this for my business. So my tasks that I assign myself month, I've got a CRM project management tool I use called Insightly that I have programmed to like me the tasks each month, which are come up with a topic. I tried to give myself a break this year by doing the first few months of the year with the topic already decided. Big surprise, it's not actually the hard part. So blog article, come up with the topic, draft it, edit the article, zhuzh it for like clarity or SEO. Like I send it through some rounds of editing for different purposes. I give it a good title, which means that's its own task, and I have a process, which is probably going to be a future blog article because I've had that thought / a client was like, give me an article on that. So anyway, so I make sure I take the time to write a good article for it. I find and craft an image to go with it with the help of my virtual assistant. I publish it and share it places, and places are not vague. It goes out on Facebook, on LinkedIn, I stopped using Twitter, and I can't post to Blue Sky magically. So Instagram, my news article, my newsletter, right? You get an email about it if you are on my email list. So I'm very specific about where I'm sharing it to. And then I repeat that every month, right? Same thing, again, new topic. And then on somewhat of an annual basis, I check in and assess what's working, what's not, what could be improved. Like at the turn of the year, I was like, I would like to work less hard on this. I will give myself tasks for the next 6 months, 8 months, however long. And this year, I'm going to reflect on that and say that didn't work quite as well as I'd hoped. Whatever. This is the process. These are all of the little steps because it isn't just post a monthly blog article, right? There's all these other aspects to it and this process that I need to go through to make it quality. So that's project A. That's for those who are admired in my racehorse plow horse. That's my plow horse. Project B is to connect with professionals who also serve my ideal client. If this is my racehorse project, I'm going to change that every now and again. But for the current quarter, it's going to be connecting with professionals who also serve my ideal client. So that seems pretty straightforward. But let's break this down because if their steps are too big, we'll never get around to it, especially if we got other shit going on. So step one would be, or task one of this project would be, pick a focused professional, right? So physical therapists or members of my chamber of nurse, or I mean, legit something I do is when the Tacoma Boss ladies get together, I try to connect with people who I've chatted with there afterwards. Right? So connecting with other professionals, first you have to identify who you're trying to connect with. Then you got to find contact information for those folks. So if I'm trying to build my contact list, my referral list for physical therapists, I need to know who I'm reaching out to. How am I going to find them? And, I don't need to contact every physical therapist on the planet, but like send out like a dozen emails, right? See if we can get some responses. And maybe that's a dozen emails to people who I already kind of know, like I came across them once and I want to connect more. Or maybe it's literally just Googling physical therapists in my area and collecting the contact info so I know where I'm sending it. Then I would also need to draft an introductory email. And with an invitation to coffee, right? Now I want that to be a quality email, so I better take a second and write it reasonably, even if I tell ChatGPT to write it for me, right? I'm gonna still read it and edit it, right? Okay, now we've got the draft. Now we have everything that we need, right? We know who we're sending it to, we know what we're sending it, and I'm gonna send those one by one, customizing each email as needed because that's going to be a more personal and effective approach. And then after a period of time, I'm going to conclude this project. So I'm going to say, you know what? I've reached out to enough physical therapists. I need to move on to something else. I'll assess the impact of this effort, and I can always come back to a different group of folks I want to connect with, or I can swap it out for a different resource activity, or I can just keep repeating this with like, oh, I got all the physical therapists. Now let's do personal trainers, and now let's do yoga teachers, and now let's do right. I can just keep going if I think my ideal client is among their clients. Yeah, I'm kind of glossing over like the advice side of this to just talk about the structure of the planning process. So that's how I break down like the two key projects that are growing my business, and how I organize that for myself. That was step 2. Those are the projects that support your goal. 1 was the goal. Step 3 is your game plan for success. So knowing what the steps are is actually different than achieving them. So when or how are you planning to achieve these, complete these steps, right? I got this big long task list. When's it going to happen? So the key to this is understanding how you usually get stuck when you're taking action. It's inevitable things will not go to plan. We can have the best of intentions and be like, yeah, I'll just do one of those things each day. And then stuff's going to happen and it's not going to go our way. And we need to have our resources top of mind that are going to help us when stuff sort of goes astray. And those resources depend on you knowing your habits and like where they usually break down. So I'm using myself as an example, so I'll get into that. So like my game plan is to work on my business, so not see clients Wednesdays between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. I can also do this work when I don't have a client booked during business hours, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So I'm specific about like when I think this work is going to get, and that allows me to better diagnose problems. This means that when I hit the end of a full day of clients and realize I made no progress on my vertical, well, duh, right? That's what we would expect. That's why I have the Wednesdays. More on that in a moment. So the barriers to me achieving my tasks, which these are highly variable for folks, but these are the things I run into. The writing muse has not graced me with her presence. I wait for her a lot. She never shows up when I call. It's always random. But anyway. Um, Also, like nice weather, gardening, other interests will distract me. I might have like a non-ideal work environment, part of why I have like an AC unit blasting in the background. Or like something about my chair is uncomfortable, or my body is uncomfortable in my chair, right? Like, or I want to be on my sofa, but it's too hot down there. Like there can always be something. Sometimes also I run into a need to reset or decompress, right? Like the compulsion to pull up the phone is too high. Sometimes there are time sensitive client needs, like I need to look into, I don't know, something very specific software that somebody's using that I've not heard of before and get an understanding of it. So I might do that between client sessions. And then there's like bio needs, right? Like gotta go to the bathroom, gotta eat food, gotta water. That stuff also has to happen. So I know these barriers, these are my typical barriers. And by knowing them, I better honor the reality of the situation. So what I see folks do is that if they're not thinking in advance of like what are the common pitfalls they experience, they go to like specific ones first. usually it's those like being distracted by other interests or sucked into technology or not having like the right setup. Like, oh, if I had, um, chair, ergonomic keyboard, like this would be easier, right? And these are barriers that can be changed, right? Like being distracted, like the other interests, the technology, the setup, right? These are all external stuff that we can change. So it's like a reasonable place to start. These are also the barriers that we often have a history with. So there might also be some shame there, like if we have a story that we're always distracted by things, that we don't focus well, that might come with a fair amount of shame. And they're also not the only barriers, right? My list was longer than that. Um, so it's not uncommon that like when I'm talking things through with a client, I'll sort of be poking around at these things, like what are the barriers? What about this? What about that? And sometimes they will have jumped to like that habitual barrier. Like this is just, I can't focus. And then I'll ask some more questions and I'll discover that there's like a substantial client or bio need that they're like not taking it out. So um, as a random example, if you've been struggling with an impinged nerve, you're not going to get your website written. Like if you literally physically cannot sit because the nerve hurts, you're not going to write your freaking website. Like if you're in any kind of active pain, like that's going to impact your productivity. Like your body's needs kind of supersede everything else. So let's be realistic about that, right? Focusing on what you can change is good, but it like runs the risk that you're going to berate yourself unnecessarily, right? You can't be mad at yourself for being in pain. I mean, you can, but like that's really not helpful. So maybe don't, and let's shift our expectations accordingly, right? Because these things that we can't change, all we can do is accept them. And that's really hard. Like that is its own kind of work. And so this is kind of circling back to the mindset practices and supportive habits that I've written a bunch of different articles about, right? That other things we can turn to build that acceptance in and understand the difference between something that can't be changed and something that can be changed. Um, so for those barriers that I do have control over, um, there's an element here of showing up for the work and for ourselves. So what this means, what I'm talking about here is that when that muse show up, that doesn't mean I get the day off. It's not like, oh, hey, it's Wednesday. Um, oh, dear muse, are you there? Oh, you're not there. Oops, got to go play in the garden, right? I will very consciously, because I'm me, be like, oh, screw that. I'm going to go play in the garden. I don't need to blame the muse on not being here. In fact, regardless of if the muse is here, I need to be here, right? I get to sit and try, regardless of if that muse ever shows up. And that can also be really hard work because that might trigger feelings of like self-doubt or inadequacy, that like it's flowing, that, whatever you're thinking about, because that muse isn't kind of like energetically pushing you. It's like, oh God, I'm thinking about every little thing that I say. And this is the work that I actually do have control over. So this is right. This is how we leverage those mindset practices into supporting us in achieving our goals and overcoming our barriers. I feel like I didn't say that very well, but that's okay because I'm not perfect and I'm going to accept that. Ooh, so meta. Okay, so that's a lot about how I do stuff. What's your personal management plan? Um, like I said, this is how I do stuff. It doesn't need to be something that worked for you. And like, let's start by assuming you're not wrong, right? If the framework isn't working, how can you better set yourself up for success? How can you be curious? How can we assume you're not a machine? Because you're not. You're a living thing. And how can we be curious about how your like perfectly flawed human self works and what would help you to work better? Um, and remember to, check your mindset, give yourself credit for like any progress that like our expectations um, can be things that are mean to us because they set the expectation high. And really, any little baby step is progress, especially in the face of like life happening, right? Whether that's body upset, challenges in the family, housing, whatever. You also get credit for learning that a certain strategy doesn't work for you, right? So even while that was a huge failure, no, that was, look, you learned a thing that was not what works. Scratch the list. What else can we try? So with time and introspection and lots of self-care, I have faith that you'll find a personal management plan that's going to work for you. Um, and I would totally love to hear like tips or tricks or strategies that you really helpful. Because I love to collect these kinds of things, but no pressure. Um, yeah, so that's how I do goal setting, making a goal setting game plan so that I can triumph at being my own boss. Um, yeah, and that's what I have to say. And there's a big, this is the end of the business plan. So who knows what I'm gonna write about next time? I actually know what I'm gonna write about next time, but I'm not gonna tell you. You just have to tune in and find out. So, all right, have a great Friday, folks, and I'll see you next month. Bye.